All right, guys, so let's jump right in with discussing congruence and similarity. We're going right into week 6, day 1. So we're looking at congruent shapes and similar shapes, and we're wondering what's the difference here. So congruent shapes have the same size, angles, and sides. They're the same shape and the same size. Similar shapes have same size angles and proportional side lengths. As we see here, we have a bigger and a smaller right triangle. When do we most commonly see this comparison? It's usually when we are talking about rigid transformations and dilations. And since the focus here is more so on basically how we see the congruence versus the similarity of shapes between the two, I'm not going to go into an in-depth lesson on rigid transformations and dilations, but we will be looking at some examples of them along with what they look like. So rigid transformations are our translations, our rotations, and our reflections that give us congruent shapes. And dilations are any time that we are discussing scale factor, which we know is in reference to multiplication, and that gives us similar shapes. So we're going to look at translations. A translation is more commonly referred to as a slide. As we see here, how the image has slid from the pre-image there. Next, we have rotations. And a rotation is more commonly referred to as a turn. Then we have the reflections. A reflection is more commonly referred to as a mirror image. We usually look at reflections over the X and the Y axis. We don't too much go into depth with reflections over the diagonal axes. All rigid transformations create congruent shapes. Now let's look at some dilations. A dilation is the enlargement or the reduction of a shape. So we're discussing how it either gets larger or it gets smaller. And if we're looking at this example of the A, we see a big A that then reduces down to a smaller one. All dilations create similar shapes. So let's review for some understanding here. We have rigid transformations, which are our rotations, translations, and reflections that give us congruent shapes. And congruent shapes are same angle and same size sides. Then we have our dilations, which is any time that we're discussing scale factor, that gives us similar shapes. And similar shapes have the same angle and proportional sides. All right, guys, I hope that this video and this slideshow could give some insight or give a few reminders or refreshers for what is to come with your lesson for today. Thank you.